threw him to the ground in front of his children without asking a single question. What they didn't know was that he was a federal agent. Jonathan Deshawn and his wife Erica had been planning this trip for over a year. Life had become a blur, him working long hours for the FBI, her running a growing dental practice while managing the household. Their time together as a family was reduced to passing conversations and late-night check-ins. So when they finally cleared their schedules, booked a quiet place, and promised their kids a real vacation, it meant something. It wasn't just a trip, it was a reset, a chance to breathe. They chose Edisto Beach, South Carolina, not for the nightlife or the glamour, but because it was quiet, familiar. A sleepy town with palm trees lining the streets and ocean air drifting through open windows. Their rental home was just right, a corner lot with a wide wooden porch, sky blue paint that had faded in the sun, and an old swing that creaked when the breeze passed. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like peace. As soon as they pulled into the driveway, the kids, 12-year-old Marcus and 8-year-old Zoe, jumped out of the SUV and raced to the front door, laughing and pushing each other to call their bedrooms. Jonathan stretched as he stepped out of the car, letting out a deep breath that felt overdue by months. "Let's not break anything before we even unpack," he joked. Erica gave him a knowing smile. "They're not listening," she said, brushing her hair back and slipping off her sandals. 6 hours in the car, they're just happy to run." They began unloading bags, putting groceries away, and lighting citronella candles to keep the bugs off the porch. For the first time in a long time, it felt like life had slowed down. But that feeling didn't last. A few neighbors passed by on the sidewalk, an older white couple with a dog. They didn't wave, they didn't smile, they just stared. Jonathan, used to this kind of tension, gave a polite nod. Nothing. Erica leaned in. "Let it go," she said. "You didn't say anything," he replied quietly. "You didn't have to," she answered. They kept unpacking, determined not to let it ruin the evening. But then the first patrol car appeared. It cruised by slowly, slower than it should have. The officer inside didn't wave, just watched. Then, 10 minutes later, another patrol car. Same behavior, different vehicle, same silent message. Jonathan sat forward in his porch chair, tracking the movement. "That's 2 in 10 minutes, he said. Erica stepped out with a towel in her hand. "Are you serious?" He nodded. "I'm gonna walk to the mailbox, just so they see I'm not hiding from anything." "You sure?" He stood up slowly. "I've done this before." He kept his pace slow, his hands visible. No sudden movements, no reaching into pockets. He even gave a respectful nod toward the patrol car as he walked by. No reaction. By the time he got back, Marcus was waiting on the porch. "Dad, that cop's still there." Jonathan turned. Now one of the officers had exited his vehicle. His hand rested near his belt. The message was clear. "I'm calling the property manager," Erica said, walking out again. "We've been here less than an hour. This is absurd." But she didn't get the chance. 2 more patrol cars pulled up, lights on. No sirens, just presence, just pressure. Then came the voice. "Step off the porch! Hands where I can see them!" Marcus froze. Zoe let out a scream. Jonathan instinctively stepped forward, placing himself between the officers and his family. "This is our rental property. We have the paperwork. I'm a federal agent. Step down now!" There was no time for explanation. An officer rushed forward, grabbed Jonathan, slammed him against the porch railing, twisted his arms behind his back, and threw on the cuffs. Erica screamed. The kids were crying. No one was listening. Erica reached for her phone. "I can show you the reservation," she yelled. But they grabbed her too, right there, on the porch, in front of her children, cuffed. Jonathan caught a glimpse of Marcus and Zoe standing frozen at the door. His son was holding his sister, shielding her eyes. That moment Those terrified faces would haunt him long after. Still, not one officer asked who he was. No one checked the lease. No one asked a single question that could have stopped all of it. The neighborhood had gone silent. Curtains shifted. Doors cracked open. People peeked out, watching like it was a show. But no one said a word. Not one neighbor stepped outside. Not one voice asked, "What's going on?" Erica was pressed face down against the porch, her cheek against the wood. "You're making a mistake," she cried out. "Our names are on the lease. The paperwork is inside. Please, just look." But they didn't hear her, or maybe they just didn't want to. Jonathan was forced to his knees in the grass. One officer, a young man, flushed with tension, pressed a knee into his back, breathing heavily, as if this was some kind of threat response. "I need you to listen carefully," Jonathan said, steadying his voice. "My name is Jonathan DeShawn. I am a federal agent with the... You're being detained. Remain silent," the officer snapped before he could finish. Another cop loomed over Marcus and Zoe. The boy stood firm, though his voice trembled. "She didn't do anything. Can I just check on my mom?" "Back inside," the officer barked. "That's my mom." Jonathan raised his voice slightly. "Let my son check on his mother. He's 12. He's no danger to anyone." No response, no movement. Erica lifted her head, still struggling to breathe. "You're scaring our children." "You got ID?" one of the officers asked her coldly. "It's in my purse," she said, voice shaking. "Inside the house. So is the lease. Everything's in there if you just check. Don't raise your voice," he muttered. And that was it. No charges, no explanations, no apologies, just fear. For a family that came looking for peace and got a reminder of what still happens when assumptions replace facts. "You don't get to bark orders at me in front of my kids and then tell me how loud I can talk," Jonathan said firmly. "You're violating our rights." That's when a second officer stepped in, older, heavier, with that tired posture of someone used to shutting down conversations. "We got a call from a neighbor," he said flatly. "Said y'all were breaking in? No plates on your SUV. You match the description." "Description of what?" Jonathan asked, keeping his voice even. The older officer didn't flinch. "Suspicious individuals." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Let me guess," he said dryly. "A black family unloading bags into a nice beach house?" The officer didn't respond. "If you really are who you say you are," he finally muttered, "you'll have a chance to explain everything. Down at the station." Erica gasped. "We're not going anywhere. This is our vacation. Our children are terrified." But their words didn't matter. The moment had already spiraled. Officers were grabbing arms, separating husband from wife, leading them away as their kids stood frozen on the porch. As Jonathan was pulled toward the patrol car, he locked eyes with his son. "Don't let them scare you," he said calmly. "Stay with your sister. You're in charge until we come back." Marcus nodded, trying to be brave, but his eyes were wet and his hands trembled. Behind them, an officer looked toward the SUV. "What's that in the glove box?" the younger cop asked. The older one shrugged. "Looks like paperwork." "You want me to check?" "Leave it. If he's lying, we'll know soon enough." Erica was led toward a different squad car. Her sandals scraped over the gravel, and her wrists were red from the cuffs. She turned back, desperate. "Please, just go inside the house. The email confirmation is open on the kitchen counter. The lease, our names, the rental agreement, it's all there." "You'll have your chance to explain," one officer said, like he was doing her a favor. In the back seat, Jonathan sat stiff, fists clenched, not from fear, but from restraint. He had spent years investigating situations just like this, cases where things escalated because of assumptions, not facts. He had interviewed families shattered by these moments. Now he was living one. He leaned forward and addressed the officer in the front seat. You're making a serious mistake. My credentials are in the glove box, driver's side, black leather holder with the bureau seal inside. You can check it right now." The officer didn't even turn his head. "We'll sort it out at the station." Jonathan leaned his forehead against the window. Outside, Marcus was holding Zoe, trying to keep her from running after them. Her face was blank with fear. His chest ached, not from what they were doing to him, but from what his children were seeing. He had always hoped to shield them from this reality a little longer, but that hope had just shattered on someone else's front lawn. What those officers didn't realize yet was that this time they had cuffed the wrong man. The police station felt colder than Jonathan expected, not in temperature, but in energy. There was no urgency, no empathy, just a chilling indifference, the kind that says, "This isn't new here." They sat him on a metal bench. His wrists were still cuffed behind him. No one offered him water. No one asked him a question. They didn't tell him what he was being charged with. They just left him there, like forgotten luggage in a terminal. He could hear Erica's voice echoing down the hall, sharp, fierce. She was demanding answers, but no one gave her any. Eventually, a young officer, couldn't have been older than 25, walked past the open door and paused. "You the FBI guy?" he asked with a smirk, like it was a joke. Jonathan stared at him. "Yes, Special Agent Jonathan DeShawn, Washington, D.C., Field Office. My credentials are in the glove box of the black SUV your team towed." The officer blinked. "Why didn't you say that earlier?" "I did," Jonathan said flatly. "More than once." The young officer shifted uncomfortably. Let me check with someone." He vanished. A few minutes later, an older sergeant stepped into the room, mid-50s, heavy-set, blank expression. "You say your badge is in the car?" Jonathan nodded. Left side of the glove box, black leather holder, bureau seal on the inside flap. The sergeant didn't say a word, just turned and left. 10 minutes passed, maybe 15. Then the sound of footsteps, fast, direct, echoed down the hallway. The young officer reappeared, but this time, his face had changed. Gone was the smirk. Gone was the casual tone. He stepped inside slowly, as if entering the room with regret. "Agent DeShawn," he said, voice lower. "Sir, we found your identification." I just wanted to say I'm sorry. This was..." "Stop," Jonathan interrupted. "Don't say miscommunication. Don't pretend this was neutral. Don't insult both of us." The officer swallowed hard. "I'll see about getting those cuffs off." "Now you're thinking." A few minutes later, Jonathan sat at a cold metal table, wrists finally free, fingers rubbing the soreness from his skin. Erica walked in, her arms crossed, her lips trembling, not from fear, but from fury. She sat down next to him. "They tried to tell me it was a mix-up," she said, "that the neighbor thought we were breaking in, that the officers were just doing their job." Jonathan didn't answer right away. He just stared at the wall as the reality sank in. Their dream vacation had become a case study in everything wrong with the system he once believed he could change. Jonathan stared at the floor. "Their job, huh?" The door opened. A tall man entered, mid-50s, in slacks and a button-up shirt. No badge, no uniform, possibly the chief. Maybe just a senior officer. Didn't matter. He pulled out a chair and sat across from Jonathan and Erica without offering his name, without even pretending to apologize. "We've confirmed your identity," he said, as casually as if he were reading the weather report. Jonathan looked up slowly. "Took you long enough." The man straightened. "You have to understand, when we get a call from a resident in that neighborhood..." "No, I don't," Jonathan cut in sharply. "You don't get to shift this onto the caller. That's not how this works. You had 4 armed officers, 2 vehicles, a rental agreement sitting on the kitchen counter. You didn't even ask to see it." The man cleared his throat, flustered but trying to maintain control. Given the situation, I'm willing to drop the charges." "There were no charges," Erica interrupted, her voice sharp. "We didn't commit a crime." He gave a slow nod, still clinging to some illusion of authority. "We'll release the vehicle, of course. No impound fee, and we—" Jonathan leaned forward. "Don't try to buy us off with waived fees. That doesn't undo what you did. Not in front of my kids." The room fell silent. Then Jonathan spoke again, voice calm but unmistakably firm. "Let me explain how this is going to go. First, I want a full written report of everything that happened tonight. That includes the names and badge numbers of every responding officer, as well as access to their body cam footage. I also want a transcript of the 911 call." The man didn't respond, so Jonathan continued. "Second, I'm calling my supervisor in D.C. the second I step outside this building." He paused. "And third, you're going to explain to your officers just how close they came to ending their careers tonight. They had no idea who I was. And frankly, that's not even the point. The point is, they were wrong, start to finish." The man's expression flattened. He had no answer. "And one more thing," Jonathan added. "My kids are still sitting on a porch, alone, in a town where their parents were just arrested for existing. You don't just move on from that." They stood. Jonathan didn't say another word, but in his gut, he knew this wasn't finished. This wasn't closure. This was the beginning. Back at the house, the street was quiet. The sun had long since disappeared, leaving only porch lights and shadows. Curtains were drawn, doors shut tight, but the silence, that lingered. Marcus sat on the front steps, unmoving. His sister Zoe was curled up under his arm, still in the same unicorn hoodie she'd worn during the drive. A duffel bag had been turned into a makeshift pillow. Neither of them had budged since the squad cars drove away. When the black SUV finally pulled back into the driveway, Marcus bolted upright. Zoe stirred, blinking her eyes open. "Dad?" He ran to meet him before the car fully stopped. "They brought you back. Are you okay?" Jonathan stepped out of the passenger seat. He didn't smile, just opened his arms and pulled his son in, holding him tight with one hand on the back of his head. "I'm okay," he whispered. "You did good. You looked after your sister. I'm proud of you." Erica emerged from the other side and scooped Zoe into her arms. "Baby, I'm so sorry. Did anyone come by? Did anyone say anything?" Zoe shook her head. "No," she said, voice small. "It got real quiet after they took you." Marcus added, "One neighbor came out, just stood across the street, didn't say anything, just watched." Jonathan glanced up. The porch light across the street was still on. Behind the curtain, a silhouette moved. A man. Probably the caller. Maybe not. Either way, he was pretending it never happened. Jonathan opened the front door. Inside, everything was frozen in time. Grocery bags still on the counter. Towels slung over chairs. The TV paused mid-cartoon. It was like they'd stepped out of a peaceful life and into something else. He walked over to the dining table and picked up the rental agreement. There it was. Erica's name, the confirmation number, the address. Everything the officers refused to check. His hand tightened around the paper. "I'm calling D.C., he said, heading for the porch. He stepped outside and dialed. The line picked up immediately. "Yeah," he said when the assistant answered. "Deshaun here. I need a direct patch to OPS, South Carolina. Town's called Edisto. Civilian complaint incoming. Multiple officers involved. I'm requesting body cam footage, and I want it flagged before it disappears." A pause. "No, this isn't work-related," Jonathan added. "It's personal. They came after my family." Inside, Erica gave Zoe a glass of water and sat beside her. "You okay, baby?" Zoe nodded, but her eyes were confused. "Why did they do that? We didn't do anything wrong." Erica held her hand. "Because they were wrong. That's why. And it's not your fault." Don't ever think it is. Jonathan walked back in, rubbing his forehead. They've already got someone on it, he said. I requested the 911 call audio. I want to hear exactly what was said and how it was said. You think it was the man across the street? Erica asked. Jonathan glanced out the window. Could be. Could have been anyone, really. But they didn't have to believe him so fast. They chose to. Marcus stood in the hallway, arms folded. Dad, what if you hadn't been with us? What if it was just me and Mom? Jonathan's chest ached. I don't know, he said honestly, but I know this. We're not staying quiet. Later that night, after Erica had tucked in the kids, Jonathan sat alone at the dining table, laptop open, fingers on the keys. He began typing, every word said, every action taken, every mistake made. He'd written dozens of incident reports in his career, but never like this. Never one that began in his own driveway. Never one where the victims were his wife and his children. This one wasn't for a case file. This one was for them. Every keystroke hit harder than the last, because this time it wasn't just about accountability. It was about what kind of world his children would grow up in, and what kind of father he refused to be silent in. There was a knock at the door. Jonathan stood up slowly, glancing through the peephole. It was the young officer, the same one who had scoffed at his credentials just the day before. He stood on the porch holding Jonathan's badge holder in one hand, his posture awkward, like he wasn't sure if he should even be there. Jonathan opened the door partway, but said nothing. I wanted to return this in person, the officer said, holding out the badge. Didn't feel right just sending it back through the department. Jonathan didn't take it immediately. The gesture didn't feel like closure. Not yet. The officer hesitated. I saw the footage, he added quietly. I saw how it looked. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Jonathan studied him for a long moment. That's a start, he said, then finally took the badge, closed the door gently, and locked it. Back in the living room, Erica looked up from her phone. Was that someone from the station? Jonathan nodded. Yeah, he brought the badge back. Anything else? He sat beside her. Yeah, he saw what we saw, but seeing it, that's not enough, not if nothing changes afterward. The next morning, just before sunrise, Jonathan's phone buzzed. He stepped outside in socks and a t-shirt, pacing slowly on the dewy lawn as fog curled off the pavement. The caller ID read, C. Vale, FBI Director. She didn't waste time. I read your report, she said. It's powerful. Jonathan didn't respond. You want us to take this public? She asked. He took a long breath. Not yet. I want to give them the chance to do the right thing, but I'm not waiting forever. Understood, she replied. But heads up, this is already moving. A neighbor's Ring camera caught the arrest. The footage is spreading on social media. Jonathan froze. How long ago? 30 minutes, maybe less. You're about to start getting calls. And she was right. By the time he stepped back inside, his inbox was already exploding. Emails from civil rights attorneys, community activists, retired agents, even one of his professors from Quantico. All saying the same thing. We saw it. We're with you. What do you need us to do? Erica walked into the kitchen in leggings and a hoodie, hair tied up, phone in hand. You see the clip yet? She asked. He nodded. Yeah, over 100,000 views already. A local outlet in Charleston picked it up. People are trying to figure out who I am. They'll know soon enough, she said. By 10 a.m., the local police department finally released a statement. It was vague and predictable. We are aware of an incident involving officers responding to a citizen call regarding suspicious activity. We are conducting an internal review. No apology, no accountability, just a press release. They're trying to get ahead of it, Erica said, without admitting a thing. Jonathan opened his laptop. They'll admit it one way or another. He began drafting a formal complaint, 3 pages long, bullet-pointed, with exact timestamps. He mentioned the badge, the kids, the body cam footage, and the refusal to even investigate the facts. He sent it to the local Internal Affairs Department and copied it to the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility, just in case. Around noon, another knock at the door. Erica answered it this time. It wasn't a cop. It was the man from across the street, the one who had watched the arrest from his window the night before. Pale, retired probably, khakis, golf shirt, HOA energy. He stood stiffly, hands in his pockets. I just wanted to come over, he began. I saw everything last night. Just wanted to say I'm sorry. Erica narrowed her eyes. Was it you who called the police? He hesitated. I wasn't sure what was going on. We don't get many rentals here. It's a quiet neighborhood, and Jonathan stepped into the doorway beside her. Let me get this straight, he said calmly. You saw a black family unloading groceries into a rental. No yelling, no signs of danger, no broken windows, and your first instinct was to call the cops and report a felony? I didn't mean for it to go like that, the man said quietly. But it did, Jonathan replied. And next time it happens, and it will, you better ask yourself what exactly it is you're afraid of, because it sure as hell wasn't us. The man gave a small, ashamed nod and walked back across the street. Coward, Erica muttered as she closed the door. Let him live with it, Jonathan said. That evening the phone rang again. A local reporter, then another. By nightfall, a national outlet had picked up the story. The headline read, FBI agent wrongfully detained while on vacation in South Carolina. The video had now passed 1 million views. Jonathan sat at the kitchen table, his children playing a board game on the floor behind him. You going to talk to the media? Erica asked gently. He looked at her. I think I have to. You're not doing it just for us, are you? He shook his head. I'm doing it because the next family might not have a badge in the glove box. But in his heart, he knew it wasn't about the badge anymore. It was about using his voice. 3 days later, Jonathan stood in front of a row of cameras inside a press conference room in Washington, D.C. To his left, 2 civil rights attorneys. To his right, a representative from the FBI's Public Affairs Division. He had been in that room before, but never like this. Flashbulbs clicked, reporters murmured, microphones shifted. He leaned forward and spoke into the mic. My name is Special Agent Jonathan DeShawn, 17 years of federal service, and 3 nights ago, I was thrown to the ground in front of my children because a neighbor thought my family didn't belong in the house we rented. He paused. The officers who responded didn't ask questions. They didn't verify our identity. They didn't check the lease. They heard the word suspicious and treated us like a threat. Another pause, longer this time. My badge was in the glove box. My credentials were on file. But none of that mattered, not until after the handcuffs. The room was silent, not even a cough. I'm speaking publicly because it should not take a federal title to be treated like a human being. Because far too many black families go through situations like this and don't have the resources or the platform to push back. The headlines were spreading fast. FBI agent wrongfully detained while on vacation. Race, bias, and the cost of assumptions. But Jonathan wasn't focused on the headlines. He was focused on what came next. The policy, the culture, the accountability. 2 days after the press conference, the Edisto Police Department held one of their own. It was short, mechanical. The police chief read stiffly from a card. We acknowledge that mistakes were made during the arrest of Agent DeShawn and his wife. We are currently reviewing our response procedures and have placed 2 officers on administrative leave pending further investigation. Jonathan watched the broadcast from his living room. Administrative leave, Erica said under her breath. That's what they call it. They're playing damage control, Jonathan replied, hoping the storm dies down. But it didn't. A city council member from Charleston called for an independent review of the department. A sitting congresswoman tweeted her support for new federal oversight of local law enforcement. Even the property owner of the rental house sent an email apologizing and offered the family a free stay anytime in the future. Erica declined. "No, thank you," she replied. "We're not coming back." Meanwhile, Jonathan stayed busy, meeting with journalists, speaking on podcasts, holding quiet conversations with civil rights leaders, colleagues, and community members. Every interview became a platform, not just to defend his name, but to speak for every father who had ever had to explain to their children why they were treated like threats in places where they did nothing wrong. He kept the message direct. This isn't about one bad cop. It's about a system that sees color before it sees context. It's about how "I thought they didn't belong" is treated as more credible than "here's my name, here's my ID." It's about how quickly a peaceful vacation can turn into something far more dangerous, and how often it does. One evening, while reviewing the officer's body cam footage with his legal team, footage his lawyers had to fight to obtain, Jonathan froze on a single frame. The image was paused on Erica, face down on the porch, her hands behind her back, crying out for their children. He just sat there, staring. Erica walked in behind him. "You okay?" He nodded slowly. "That image, that night, it's going to stay in their minds. No matter what I do, I can't take that away." She sat down beside him, her voice soft but firm. "Maybe not, but they also saw you stand up for us. They saw you do something with it. That matters too." And she was right. The kids were healing in small, quiet ways. Zoe had gone back to drawing again. Her latest picture showed their little blue rental house under a sunny sky with 4 smiling stick figures. Marcus had asked his dad how to write a formal letter. "I want to send one to the mayor," he'd said. But before anything could truly shift, there was one conversation Jonathan still had to have, the most important one. The night before school started, he sat on the back porch with Marcus. The stars over Washington, D.C. were faint through the haze, but the silence between father and son was clear. Marcus held a glass of apple juice, eyes on the railing. "Why'd they think we didn't belong there?" he asked quietly. Jonathan didn't rush the answer. He let the question hang. "Because," he said gently, "sometimes people are taught that certain folks don't belong in certain places. And when they believe that long enough, they stop asking questions. They just react." Marcus nodded, still looking down. "But we didn't do anything wrong." "No, we didn't. So why did they treat us like that?" Jonathan took a slow breath. "Because how the world sees you and how you see yourself, those things don't always match. And sometimes people don't care about facts. They only care about the version of you they already made up in their minds." Marcus looked up at him for the first time. "But you're FBI. Shouldn't that have stopped them?" Jonathan smiled, but it wasn't a happy one. Being FBI didn't stop them. That's why I had to speak out. Not because of my job, but because it could have happened to you, or to your sister. And maybe someday, someone will remember what happened to us and make a better choice. Marcus didn't reply right away. He just reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I wrote something," he said, "for my English class. The teacher said we could write about our summer." Jonathan unfolded it slowly. At the top, in neat handwriting, it read, "The night I learned grown-ups can be wrong." Jonathan read in silence. The words were simple, honest, no big vocabulary. Just a 12-year-old explaining what it felt like to see his parents on the ground when he knew they hadn't done anything wrong. When he finished, Jonathan looked at his son. "You wrote the truth." Marcus shrugged. "I didn't know if I was allowed to say all that." "You always are," Jonathan said. "Always." The next morning, Erica packed Zoe's lunch and kissed her forehead as she stepped onto the school bus. Marcus wore a button-down shirt and tucked his essay carefully into his backpack. Jonathan watched them from the porch, hand resting on the doorframe. He wasn't the same man who had left for that vacation 10 days ago. None of them were. But maybe that was the point, because this story, their story, was never just about one man, one arrest, or one neighborhood. It was about how easily things can go wrong when fear speaks louder than facts, about how unchecked authority becomes dangerous, about what happens when good people stay silent to protect bad policy. And more than anything, it was about dignity, for the families who never got the benefit of a badge, for the kids who had to grow up too fast in moments that never should have happened. So if you're hearing this, if any part of this story hit something real in you, don't let it stop at sympathy. Let it move you. Speak, act, question what you're told. Hold your systems accountable, because silence is what lets it happen again, and again, and again.